morning. My name is Pastor Chelsea, and it's my joy to get to welcome you here in this space and this time. Today, our worship will be led by the team of 15 youth and 4 adults who went on our youth mission trip, not this past week, but the week before, through Sierra Service Project to Smith River. And you'll get to hear more about what that trip was like, what they took home from that trip, what inspired them. But for now, as we worship, we enter into the theme of that week. That theme that you can see on any of the back of our red t-shirts here, the theme to love courageously. It takes courage to love, doesn't it? It takes the willingness to trust, to put ourselves out there. Love changes us. And so today, as we enter into this time of worship, this time that calls us to love and to courage, we start with the reminder, our foundation, that we are loved by God. As Christians, that is always our starting place, always the place that we come back to, always the bedrock of who we are. We are beloved children of God. And so that is the good news that we start worship with this morning. That no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you are not only welcomed here, but you are loved here. And so I invite you to settle into worship, to take a couple deep breaths maybe, and as the light of Christ comes forward, to center yourself in this reminder that the light of God's love burns in each and every one of us. And today the passage from Scripture that we hear is not a story, but it's a letter. And it's from a letter that was written by the disciple John. And most letters in the New Testament were written to specific people at specific places, facing specific problems. This one was not. It seems like John just wrote this letter and said, here, share it with everybody, because everybody's got to hear this news. It doesn't deal with a specific problem, but with the general struggles of what it means to follow Christ, no matter where we are, no matter when we are. And in this short letter, John comes back again and again and again and again to that foundation of love. And so as we hear these verses from the first letter of John, chapter 4, as we prepare to hear these verses, I invite you to prepare your hearts, to listen and to wonder, to notice how John is talking about love. How do you hear John talking about love in ways that resonates with you? And how do you hear John talking about love in ways that challenge you? We hear now this reading from 1 John.
Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us.
John reminds us where we look to find God. We don't look far away. We don't look up into the heavens. We look close by at the loved ones who sit next to us. We look at those loving relationships that we have with one another, those relationships where we give of ourselves, not because we feel obligated, but because we truly love the other person. Those relationships where we forgive, not because we know it's what we're supposed to do, but because we know if we don't forgive, we don't get to be in relationship with this person we love anymore. We look to those relationships where we simply delight at getting to be with one another because we are so in love with the other person. It is that bond of love, John tells us, that most clearly and most deeply shows us who God is, because God is love. And Jesus is the example we have of what that love looks like here on earth. That example of love that is courageous, that love that is not easy, but that love that brings liberation and healing and freedom and goodness to all it touches. And so we hear again the call to love courageously, to love in this example of Jesus. For it is when we love that we know God. It is when we love that we are living as children of God. And we know that love doesn't just meet us where it finds us and leave us there, but love always is working on us, on our hearts, on our minds, on our souls, on our lives, so that we grow more and more to be children of love, living this type of courageous and brave love in the world. And so now I invite the children to come forward and to hear the children's message. And as they're doing so, if you have a prayer request that you would like us to pray for during the service, there's a prayer request card in the pew in front of you, and you can find it, write it down, and either bring it up to me during the passing of the peace or give it to one of the ushers. But now is the time for the children to come forward and for Emily and Olivia to come forward and lead us in the church. Will you pray with me? God, may the words of our hearts, may the words that we hear this morning be pleasing in your sight. May your Holy Spirit move and open our hearts and our minds and our souls so that we can hear you speaking anew to us this morning. Amen. So today we have the joy to get to hear from some of the participants on our mission trip. And so I would like to invite forward Emily Necco and Sarah Red to share their reflections with us.
Hi, I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're both freshmen, and this was our first SSP. So before we left on the trip, we agreed to talk together this Sunday, but by the end of the trip, we realized we had such an amazing time, we could probably talk separately for hours about it. So I came into this trip not knowing exactly what I was getting into. My dad had gone for the past 14 years, and I had seen lots and lots of pictures, but I knew the pictures didn't capture everything that went on at SSP. So I didn't set my expectations too high, and I was planning on going with the flow and just being there for the ride. But as the trip went on, I realized it surpassed any expectations I could have set. There were three main parts of SSP that all have an important part in the week. There's the program, the project, and the community. So the first part I want to talk about is the program. Program is basically like the church service or Sunday school we had every night. But I quickly realized it was unlike any service or Sunday school I had ever experienced. The first program was relatable and asked questions that really made me think. After the first session, I left thinking, wow, I really connected with that. But it got even better from there. Every day had a theme that revolved around a central theme for the week, love courageously. Every program added to the last lesson and was well thought out. By the end of the week, I felt I had grown in my faith and seen God in ways I had never seen him before. The best program, in my opinion, of the trip was our spirit walk on Thursday night. The program was short, had a short hike, and we stopped a few times and heard faith stories about some of the staff. By far the best part was when we were told to go out on the beach and think about 2 words that described our core values as a Christian. I took a step out of the woods and saw the most incredible sunset I've seen in my life out on the beach. And just being able to sit there silently and take in the incredible world God gave us was an amazing experience.
I forgot to print it out, so I'm going to be using my phone. When I first arrived at SSP, I felt awkward and a little out of place around people that I've never met or seen before in my life. But as soon as one of the staff came up and greeted me, I felt at home with the strangers around me. SSP has an atmosphere of acceptance and love to everyone. I felt at home there. My group and I at SSP worked on making a ramp and stairs for a senior named Norma. Although building ramps and drinking Norma smoothies she kindly made us was great, nothing compared to not only seeing Norma's face light up when she would see the progress we were making, but seeing how everyone would bond over only a week of knowing each other.
The last aspect of SSP, and in my opinion the most impactful, was community. From the moment we pulled up, we were greeted by smiling faces of the staff and were joined by dozens of other energetic volunteers.
At our first mealtime, most Asbury people split up, and we dined with campers from other churches. Everyone was super friendly, and it was so easy to feel at home. As the week went on, we got to know each other, got to know our work teams even better, and really felt a true sense of community and belonging. By far the best part of was going to program each day and having the lessons on loving courageously. And it opened your eyes to the ways the work teams and other volunteers love courageously every day. Whether it was giving watermelon to people at the end of the food line, or helping to wash dishes or do kitchen patrol when no one else was willing to, the willing to serve others with love was overwhelming here, and it made me feel more welcome than I have at any other camp. Being part of such a wonderful community helped me understand loving courageously more than any lesson could. And I hope to be able to find and recognize the love and community I found at SSP in school and other activities in my everyday life.
One of the counselors in my group, Dan, said to me that SSP is truly a special place. It's a place where we take a break from everything going on in our lives, from all the stress that we have been going through. We take a week out of our lives, and we are given the opportunity to make a change, to become closer to God, and to love courageously. Each night, our spiritual guru, Kelsey, would preach to us about opening our hearts. She shared her experience with religion on our Thursday night spiritual walk, and I really connected with it. I realized through her story that it's okay that I don't have all the answers. It's okay that I'm not sure what lies ahead of me. But I have God, and He has a plan for me, and it will be great. I'm truly blessed to have the opportunity to do what God would want me to do.
Hello. So I'm Emily, if anyone doesn't know. This will have been my second and final SSP because I'm going off to college. Last year in Spokane was my first ever SSP experience, and might I say it was life-changing. Little did I know it would be one of the most impactful and special experiences I have ever had. Fast forward to this year's trip, I could hardly contain my excitement. I was ready for the good laughs, good people, and good food. I definitely felt more prepared this year than last, but obviously not prepared enough considering I forgot a pillow again. But in all seriousness, I learned a lot about love this week. Not just the mushy-gushy love you see on TV or in the movies, but the love that surprises you. And this is what I mean. On Friday, our last work day, we split into our individual work teams and we shared a few words about each person. One thing someone said about me that really struck me by surprise is they said, "Emily, I found you really hard to read," followed with a series of compliments and words of affirmation after that. Although those were nice, it just really stuck with me, and all I could think about was, "You were hard to read." This isn't necessarily a bad or negative comment, but it definitely had me scratching my head. I have heard this more and more growing up, and especially in the past couple months. Why? I don't know. But I see myself as an open book, and I have no secrets and tend to be a naturally happy person, and for me that has always been enough. As the rest of the day lingered on, I realized maybe I wasn't so open. I have always had my friends say I'm emotionless or heartless because I don't cry, even when I'm not cutting onions. So I realized I am hard to read because I choose to not be in touch with my emotions. But this comment, I knew getting in touch with my emotions was my top priority for the week. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do that, but I made it my mission as a take-home challenge. Later that evening, on Friday, my best friend Olivia was giving the evening devotional, and she had worked very hard on that all day. She cried at the end of it. Just moments later, the SSP staff sang us a goodbye song. It was called Home. As soon as we heard the first note, everyone cried. There I was, between Suzanne and Olivia, the two most important people in my life, as they were crying, and I was dry of tears. Even though I feel the same way and the same emotions as all of them, anger, sadness, happiness, I never show it. So I go to the main theme for this week, to love courageously. If this year's SSP has taught me anything, it has taught me to wear my heart on my sleeve and to love courageously. So in spirit of loving courageously and wearing my heart on my sleeve, I love to share my feelings about my friends here. This is one of the last times I'll be standing up here with these people, and they have been very important in my life. We have laughed, we have cried, some of us. I just want to thank each and every one of them for being my support system throughout this journey and for all the good times. The love I have for each and every one of you is that surprising love I was talking about. Thank you.
All right, so I kept this relatively short, but I have a bit of a different experience from the rest of the group because for Phoenix and I, we were the only ones who have been to Smith River 4 years ago when Asbury went as a group. We were the only youth that were part of that group that went, and so we'd been before. And because of that, I kind of took notice of a lot of the differences between the two experiences, just naturally, because you compare the trips that you've taken. And one of the things that came back to memory was that my first trip to Smith River, just on the logistics side of things, was a little rocky because it was week one and they were still setting things up. You know, we were waiting for tools for an hour and some, and there wasn't always enough food, and there wasn't always, the space we were sleeping in was a little cramped, but none of it was that way this time around, which was absolutely fantastic. Even with taking in another SSP site because they were not able to work at their site because of the smoke from the fires. But none of that is what made this trip so much better than the first one, and even that was a lot of fun. So last time I went to Smith River, I went with a very small group of Asbury people. It was just me, Kendall, Phoenix, Jocelyn, and one of Jocelyn's friends. And I knew Kendall pretty well, and Phoenix a little bit too, but other than that, I really didn't know the people that I was going with. And so as the week went on, we kind of grew closer together and learned more about each other, as SSP tends to do to people. But in a different way than some of my more recent SSP trips like this one. Being a small group, I kind of bonded with the rest of the group because I was clinging on to people that I wanted to know. It was a week of, you know, it was a full week. It was about 60 people, of which I barely knew 5 of them. And so I kind of shoved myself in a corner with the rest of these people, and I was open to learning with them and being with them, but it was kind of an intimidating experience to branch out to all these 55 other people that I'd never met before and be open with them. And that was very different than these last, especially 2 SSPs. I think that being so close with this group here and all of the people that we went to this time around, and knowing them already, and just being open with them, really allowed me to make the most out of the SSP experience, not because I wanted to spend more time and share with them, but because it made me more open to share with everybody at SSP, especially the people that we didn't come here knowing. And that's something really special about SSP. You make lots of friends that you probably wouldn't have bothered to meet or to talk to otherwise. And you learn so much as a group just by being willing to branch out and be open and accepting to all sorts of new people. And I think that's a large part of what SSP has taught me is to not think twice about branching out to others in order to do service or just to show love and love courageously to those who we might not otherwise think to do so at first glance. And I am so glad that I have had SSP as an experience to teach me this, and I am greatly looking forward to another year at SSP. Thank you.
So I have 3 pages, but it won't take long because it's a really big font because I'm old. So Sierra Service Project's mission is to build faith and strengthen communities through service to others. This year, there was the usual mission trip projects, wheelchair ramps, painting, a fence, but there's so much more to SSP than just the project, as you've already heard. Daily activities include spiritual awakening, the work day at the site, the opportunities to serve, which is doing dishes, doing KP, cleaning bathrooms, and cleaning showers. Note to parents, yes, they do know how to do it. An evening program and an evening devotional. Each work group is assigned to one of these tasks every day, and they rotate through. Each year has a theme, and as you've heard, this year's theme is Love Courageously. Each day has a theme that relates to the main theme, which is discussed at lunch over peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, for those that don't have peanut allergies, and they're called spiritual sandwiches. This year's topics on day one was courage in the face of ... What stops you from living your life the way God wants you and loving people and being a disciple? Peer pressure, busy schedules, soccers, being afraid of being touchy-feely, as my brother told me this past week. The second day was courage to listen to other people and really listen, even if it's something they're going through that you haven't experienced, but to be there and walk with them through that journey. The third day was from heart to hands. It's a move to action, to take that love and move it and use it. The fourth day was open your heart and find ... What are you going to find? Are you going to find love, understanding, compassion, caring? And then the fifth day was how will you stand for love? A call to action. Within my group, these spiritual sandwiches spurred conversations about spirituality versus religion. It spurred a conversation about suicide. Nobody there was contemplating suicide, but several in our group had an experience with somebody that either had experienced it in their family or had experienced personally. And that was a very moving conversation. We talked about God wings. And if you don't know what they are, ask me. We talked about what the church provides or in some cases doesn't provide. I talked about my experience here with Asbury, with Fertile Groundworks and Habitat for Humanity and the Homeless Refuge and Open Heart Kitchen. And that's just a few of all of the things that our church has to offer for people that want an avenue to serve. And we also talked about church as a checkbox. As a youth growing up, we went to church every week. My favorite part of church was going to breakfast afterwards. So it was a checkbox. I went to church. And as I grew up and became an adult, I grew away from the church. But I didn't grow away from my faith. I'm a good Christian. I always believe I'm a good Christian. I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal. I try to be kind. Doesn't always come out that way, but I try to be. And I followed the golden rule. But what I found through SSP is that there's another aspect to being a Christian, and that's living out your faith and being a disciple. It was mentioned a little bit earlier. We heard testimony from staff members about their faith journeys and the positive changes in their life when they accepted God. One was a continuation of a testimony from last year from a gal that was not readily accepted by everybody. She didn't have the cool jacket. It was a very powerful story to hear her journey and how she's become comfortable with herself in God's love. The second story was a girl that went to SSP because it was fun, but she didn't have that deep connection with God. She applied to a position at SSP that she thought she was completely unqualified for because of her lack of a relationship with God. She was hired anyway, which made her reflect on her relationship with God. And on staff, she was our spiritual counselor. And I think she was probably the best that I've had in my years at SSP. I experienced gratitude that was given back to our group in the form of fresh Marion berries one day, homemade raspberry jam to go with our peanut butter another day, and every day there was some sort of a homemade snack or treat or cookies. That was from the homeowner at which we were building around. When you first go to SSP, you're put into a work group. And typically, you'll know one, maybe two people in that work group. I had one youth from SSP, and coincidentally, he happened to be the same youth that was in my group, one of the same youths that was in my group last year. Last year, he was not real engaged, and one of the things you learn to do at SSP is use power tools. Well, it took pretty much all week before I finally got him to use a power tool, and he used a screw, and he put in some boards on the wheelchair ramp handles, and he did pretty good. This year, I asked who wants to use the saw, and he said, I do. And he made a pretty difficult cut. It was we were making the stringers for the ramp, and he did a good job on it, and everybody praised him and said, wow, that's really cool, you did so great. I saw with him an engagement I hadn't seen before, and it was empowering to see him grow in his confidence and in his own faith. Another one of the youth in my group, Carly, was empowered to go home to her church and see what opportunities are available that she could help with, and committed to starting some programs if there was nothing there that she could do. And then there was Lance, our spiritual leader within our group, who was told by the other youth that he was a good speaker and a great leader of our spiritual sandwiches. And maybe he should consider going into ministry someday. As in previous years, I was in awe of this group. And Austin alluded to the other group that came to us. They called it the Mega Week. We had 70 some odd people, they had 60 some odd people, and now all of a sudden we had 150 people, or 180 people, whatever the number was. It was pretty amazing. Song time was just wild. And when I see that amount of youth and those people that are committed to serving others, it really gives me hope for the future. For me, this week brought back the thought of reaching out to youth at risk, which I've had before, but never knew of an avenue to pursue it. I may be unqualified, I really don't know where or how to start, but I will journey courageously down this path into the unknown, empowered by my faith and the support of those around me, especially my wife.